Support our work by checking out armchairhistory.tv, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter and join our Discord. This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Whether you're starting a business, getting into a new hobby, or working on a new class project, having your own website is a great way to stand out. Stay tuned until the end of the video for an exclusive offer from Squarespace just for Armchair Historian fans. Just after 8 p.m. on May 1st, 2011, the White House announced an unexpected late-night press conference. 3 hours later, several news outlets were reporting that an overnight raid somewhere in South Central Asia might have involved Osama Bin Laden. At around 11:30, then-President Barack Obama finally arrived to tell the nation what many had already suspected. The architect of the September 11th attacks and founder of Al-Qaeda had been killed. I'm Griffin Johnson, the Armchair Historian, and this is Operation Neptune Spear, the death of Osama Bin Laden. The September 11th attacks sparked one of the largest manhunts in American history. Dozens of intelligence agencies were suddenly laser-focused on the capture or elimination of Osama bin Laden. But after tracking his whereabouts to Afghanistan and tearing the country apart to locate him, American intelligence hit a brick wall in the form of the White Mountain Cave network known as Tora Bora. It would be more than 2 months before the small contingent of coalition fighters began their assault on the old Mujahideen redoubt, and by then it was too little, too late. As it turns out, on December 16, 2001, bin Laden and a number of his aides traveled along the ancient smuggler passes that had served canny locals since the days of the Silk Road, and stymied the march of many empires for just as long. Traveling due south into territory controlled by his tribal allies, bin Laden began 2002 in the country where he would spend the rest of his life, Pakistan. The specifics of bin Laden's life after he entered Pakistan are poorly documented and contentious. For a while, it seemed as if he had simply vanished into the tribal borders of Pakistan, but a new luxury compound was erected in Abbottabad sometime between 2003 and 2005. It was 8 times larger than the nearby buildings and had concrete walls ranging from 12 to 18 feet or 3.7 to 5.5 meters tall and were topped with razor wire. We now know that bin Laden moved into this compound under unknown circumstances shortly after its completion. It's believed that at this time, Osama may have been under house arrest by Pakistan's inter-service intelligence forces. While this claim is disputed, it would have been out of character for Pakistan to house bin Laden. Some of the Taliban militants that fled America's invasion of Afghanistan were taken into custody, yet were free to direct their network of fighters under a watchful gaze. If you'd like to learn more about the origins of the Taliban, my friend Shervan from the Caspian Report has a video on just that.
Hi Griffin, if you want to understand the driving motives of the Taliban, how they were shaped, what they believe, and basically their social evolution, check out my video on the origins of the Taliban, now available on the Caspian Report channel.
For 5 whole years, the CIA struggled to identify anyone who might be part of bin Laden's courier network. After so much wasted effort and frustration, a single suspect was finally identified, a man operating under the pseudonym of Abu Ahmed al-Kuwaiti. Although various interrogations established his connection with bin Laden, his whereabouts remained unknown. That is, until the summer of 2010, when American officials caught al-Kuwaiti on a wiretap that finally enabled them to trace him back to the mysterious compound in Abbottabad. Using a mixture of stealth drones, satellite imaging, and human intelligence assets, the CIA discovered that only al-Kuwaiti and his brother were allowed in and out of the compound. After further observation, a mysterious individual, whom analysts nicknamed Pacer, was sometimes observed walking in the interior courtyards, always alone. The observers quickly came to suspect that this was bin Laden himself, but just like every other step along this journey, confirming his identity was a challenge. In their pursuit of evidence, CIA hackers targeted known Al-Qaeda computer networks, while field operators managed to plant spyware on the courier's phones. The CIA even ran a faux vaccination drive designed to collect DNA evidence from a member of Bin Laden's family. But despite all of these efforts, Pacer remained anonymous, his identity as uncertain as ever. Despite the lack of supporting evidence, a number of plans were proposed to apprehend Pacer. Since Pakistan's Inter-Service Intelligence Agency were strongly suspected to be actively cooperating with Bin Laden, any suggestions of involving them in a joint assault on the compound were quickly dismissed. A high-altitude bombing operation was favored by many of President Obama's advisors, but was scratched due to his concerns about civilian casualties and the difficulty of confirming the elimination. Ultimately, the president decided to authorize a risky commando raid without the prior knowledge or consent of the Pakistani government. In January, Admiral William H. McRaven, then commander of the U.S. Joint Special Operations Command, began planning a raid with a Navy SEAL captain who was identified only as Brian. Eventually, they hand-selected 23 operators from SEAL Team 6's Elite Red Squadron. Throughout April, they practiced the operation on one-to-one replicas built in Virginia and Nevada, trying to simulate the environment where the raid would occur. On April 28th, the team arrived in Jalalabad, Afghanistan, and awaited the final order. That night, Barack Obama would not come to a final decision. If the intelligence about Bin Laden's whereabouts proved to be faulty, or if Pakistan's defense forces intercepted the choppers, the outcome would be catastrophic. On the other hand, if Bin Laden really was in the Abbottabad compound, then one of the most hated enemies of the United States would soon face justice. The next morning, he gave the go-ahead to launch Operation Neptune Spear. On May 2nd, at 2300 hours, 2 Black Hawk helicopters, specifically modified for stealth operations, departed from an airfield less than 50 miles or 80 kilometers from Tora Bora, where Bin Laden had escaped the Americans over 9 years prior. On board the aircraft were the 23 SEALs, a Pakistani-American translator named Ahmed, and a Belgian military dog named Cairo. 2 more choppers, carrying an additional 25 SEALs, were held in reserve on an isolated lake bed near the Pakistani-Afghanistan border. They would only be called upon if the Pakistani military reacted with hostility towards the first team. Until then, they watched the skies. With no moonlight to guide them, Hilo 1 and 2 made the flight to Abbottabad equipped with night vision goggles, arriving at approximately 0130 local time. As they made their final approach, Hilo 1 experienced a technical problem euphemistically called settling with power. The aircraft crashed just inside the compound, while Hilo 2 touched down across the street. No Americans had even entered the compound yet, and the specter of defeat was already rearing its ugly head. The SEALs in Hilo 2 and officials in the Situation Room back in Washington waited with bated breath, until finally a voice over the radio broke the silence. The SEALs from Hilo 1 reported that nobody had been injured. The 12-man team from Hilo 1 breached the gate from the courtyard where they'd crashed. Meanwhile, several of the SEALs from Hilo 2 were now working alongside Ahmed to secure the perimeter, telling curious neighbors to stay in their homes. Those not assigned to crowd control entered the compound from the north. In the south end of the compound, 3 SEALs broke off from the group to clear the guest house, while the rest formed small teams to clear the rest of the inner courtyards. The guest house team encountered Al-Kuwaiti and his family, who had apparently been residing inside. When the courier retrieved a weapon, the Americans shot and killed him. At this point, SEALs began entering the first floor of the main building and encountered Al-Kuwaiti's brother, Abrar, his children, and his wife. After exchanging fire with the SEALs, the parents were both killed. On each floor, locked iron gates blocked access to the stairwell and had to be successfully blown open with C4 charges. On the staircase of the second floor, the team spotted and killed Khalid, Osama Bin Laden's 23-year-old son. On the 3rd floor, they found a tall, thin man peering out of a bedroom door. As the first 3 SEALs burst into the bedroom, they found 2 women standing between them and Bin Laden, later identified as his 5th wife, Amma, and another unidentified wife. The first SEAL to enter the room thought that Amma was about to charge him and shot her in the leg. He then tackled the 2 other wives to the ground, possibly believing that they were wearing suicide vests. At the same time, the SEAL immediately behind him fired at Osama Bin Laden. Over the radio, he called out, "For God and country, Geronimo, Geronimo, Geronimo," using the code phrase for enemy killed in action. The architect of the 9/11 attacks had been found, and his body lay on the floor. 18 minutes had elapsed since the Americans arrived. All told, 4 men and 1 woman were killed in the raid, none of whom were Americans. For the next 20 minutes, the operatives scoured the compound for computer equipment, flash drives, and CDs, while a small demolition team did their best to get rid of the crashed helo. One of the Chinooks that had been waiting in reserve arrived soon thereafter. It helped ferry the SEALs and Bin Laden's body back to the Bagram Air Base, where his identity was officially confirmed. It's long maintained that Neptune's Spear was a capture-kill mission, that is, one intended to capture Bin Laden alive if possible. In truth, it's kind of hard to imagine the SEALs taking him prisoner, and many argued that assassination was the mission objective from the start. Regardless of the intent, the decade-long manhunt for Osama bin Laden had ended in a brief raid that lasted less than 40 minutes. Before we finish, I'd like to once again thank our sponsor, Squarespace. This intuitive website builder includes easy links to all of the most common social media platforms, integrated analytics and support for podcasts, and personalized email campaigns and mailing lists. Above all, Squarespace focuses on being easy to use, allowing anyone of any skill level to quickly design something visually appealing and simple to navigate. Go to squarespace.com to start a free trial today, and once you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/armchairhistorian for 10% off of your first purchase of a website or domain.